Pati, MA, from Catholic University of Lublin and Jagiellonian University, with presentation, Are You Content with Just One Reality? Educational LARP's methodology.
Thank you. Is it working well? Yeah. So, are you? No? I'm more or less. I'm very happy to talk about it again and again, and I can do it all the time. Talking about LARP is one of the best things beside doing LARP. And just to remind some people who still don't know what is LARP, it's live action role playing, it's improvisational theater game, something between game and theater, improvised. So basically you are playing a role, you are in a character, you have some objectives to do, and also there is some structure and mechanics inside the game, so it is different from theater. Theater has a scenario, and you are just following the scenario. In LARP, everything is improvised. There is only some vague structure from the very beginning, some kickstart, like what is the word said where, and so on. But you have mechanics of the game, so you know how the word works. And the question which was asked by Klaus Rasted, one of the owners of the Dziobak LARP studio, one of the biggest studios, which is in the Polish castle in Moszna, but bought by Norwegian guy. So are you content with just one reality, or do you long for something more, for a taste of a different world, exciting adventures and the chance to view life through the eyes of another? Who doesn't? Everybody wants to go to the fairyland, even if it doesn't want to say so, because escaping reality is so easy. But LARP is not only about escaping the reality. It's not just a game to play with swords or to become orc or elf. It can be something more. So that's why, with a group of amazing people, for 3 years we are creating educational LARPs, which are different from the commercial ones. Not only for entertainment, but also for educational and therapeutical purposes. So as you see, that the educational LARP, when it's properly designed, it can be used as an innovative educational tool. So we can get interculture, civic, ecological, social competences. Depends on what is the topic of the LARP. And also, like you can imagine, like, but how? If people are just changing into some elvish costumes, like how they can learn something. For example, leadership, or self-confidence, or empathy, or working in a group. Or sometimes it is designed just to tackle some specific topic, like migration, or climate change. Refugees, yeah. And then it forces players to look for extraordinary solutions and learn new mental patterns. That if you want to teach the theory, then people will just use the patterns they know. But when they are in different realm or in post-apocalyptic world, they are forced to look for different patterns of behavior and solutions. And one of the biggest advantages of choosing LARP as an educational tool is that it is engaging and activating participation, full participation of a player, of a participant. And this approach is not just made up by us or in 20th century, it's already in 3rd century before Common Era. And even if so many people say that it was said by Confucius, but it wasn't, it was the other guy, but from his school. The quotation is, tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I will understand. This is how LARP is based, the educational LARP. If you just teach people about migration or how to be a leader, yeah, they can forget. If you show them how to be a good leader, they will remember, she was a good leader, or yeah, the migration. But if you involve them, if you make them a leader, if you put them in a migrant shoes, then they will understand and it will go deep, deep inside. Another guy, probably known, Aristotle, he said that for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. And this is nothing else than very popular saying learning by doing, which is one of the basic strategies of non-formal education, which educational LARP is part of. So this practical and behavioral approach to learning, it wasn't constructed just for this. It has a very long tradition by very smart philosophers as well. Oh, and going back to that guy, when he said this, he got on his mind his students, which he was mentoring, to learn rituals. And then he said, you cannot just learn the rituals, you have to do them and perform them. Then you will remember all of them and what is the meaning. And this is the same with LARP. And just to go back for a little, we will not focus too much on it, but just to go through the LARP can have its roots in ancient Rome, where people were recreating mythical scenes, and also they were improvised. Some of them, they were not like tragedy with a scenario, but people were improvising, having fun. And also later, Chinese and medieval Europeans, they were organizing events in which participants pretended to be from earlier age. In Versailles, they were making lots of LARPish events when the queen was walking through the gardens and some fauns and nymphs were approaching her and talking, so she had to improvise and all the court had to improvise and so on. And also has roots from improvisational theater, commedia dell'arte, 16th century, interaction with people, playing up to others and so on. But the real beginning is in 60s. Lots of things started in 60s, and also LARP. But first, it started as this kind of historical reenactment, medieval, by the Society for Creative Anachronism in Berkeley, California. And then they were just like in the Anglo-Saxon LARPs, buffering, maybe not everybody is familiar with the word. It means safe fencing and fighting with safe weapons in LARP. And then the popularity in 70s, when because of the publication of the early tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. So the fantasy LARPs began springing up in many places independently after that. And the 90s is the Vampire the Masquerade. That's how it started to be very popular already when people started playing it up. And that was first published Larp System. When we think about the Larp System, we can call it mechanics. So how the word works, like if you cast a spell, or how many hit points you have when you are fighting, all this kind of stuff you have to design in the realm you are playing in. And one of the biggest, 1,000 players on each side in Great Britain, The Gathering, that was the largest festival LARP in UK, but they split it, LT DeLorean Trust. I'm quite interested in the Scandinavian way. Like in 1907, they started a Knutepunkt conference, where they started talking about theory of LARP, how to do it, why, and they had many different approaches, psychological, sociological, philosophical, always they were talking and writing books on LARP theory. One of the first, which they call it like a guide, is a LARP grows up theory and methods in LARP from 2003. And then we have many types of LARP. One kind is a chamber LARP, which is focused on more educational purposes. It's perfect for teaching negotiations, problem solving, and also introducing some historical scenarios. So, but it is not the immersion LARP. It's more focused on a topic and this problem solving things. And it encourages conspiracy and broadly understood political game. So we see the aims, political, social, historical situation, democracy, migration, participation, everything. So this is a very good way to teach and to learn these things. There is another one, Nordic style, immersion LARP. This is probably something what you could see when you type LARP in Google. Most of the LARPs they show, they are the immersion LARP, which means that they are focused on diving into the world which people created with all the costumes, with all the props, scenario, everything. And they made it up to distinguish from Anglo-Saxon LARP focus on this buffering thing. Before they were using the name like Arts LARP, still some people call it immersion LARP or Nordic style. And aims, collaboration, this is very important. For example, there is a notion in LARP terminology, play up to somebody role or to some situation. This is this collaboration that all the groups and fractions and people have to work together and play together. Without this, there wouldn't be any LARP if everybody would play individually. And artistic vision, that you feel that you are in some amazing, beautiful, it doesn't have to be beautiful in a stereotypical way, it can be beautifully post-apocalyptic world, but amazingly crafted. So it has a loose scenario. Usually it has just a Kickstarter and focused on immersion. Role-playing, yes, role-playing is very important. And another terms from LARP terminology, which maybe you can be interested in, is bleeding. So when you meet some LARPers and they can say like, oh, I had such a big bleed out or bleed in, or you can ask, oh, have you been bleeding during the LARP? And doesn't mean that there was like fountain of blood around. No, it's in immersion, which makes you bleeding. So basically, this is that your thoughts and emotions, I will just directly go. The thing here, I just wanted to show you that the positive, negative experience in extreme role-playing, there are people who are writing lots of academical texts. The other one, yearning for the hero within, live-action role-playing as engagement in mythical archetypes. So there is lots of material which is this psychological approach. Oh, now it's better. So, bleed. Mostly, we are using this with bleed in and bleed out. I will give you examples because then it will be much easier. Bleed in means when me, myself, my thoughts and feelings bleed to my character. So, for example, if I'm Pati and my character is Nanna, then if I'm shy, my character Nanna also will be shy. They give this like, oh, for example, a scared player may lead to a character that is jumpy, nervous, or overly cautious. But bleed out is absolutely different. So from the character, the emotions and feelings are going to the real person, real identity. For example, if Nanna feels very self-confident and Pati is not, but after playing self-confident, using this method, fake it till you make it, Pati becomes more self-confident because she tried it on a safe ground. That's why we can use it in an educational way, because it has impact on this behavioral part. It's not just telling, oh, you should be more self-confident. No, play it. And even if you say, oh, but I don't know, that's okay, just pretend. And then your body will get used to different way of moving, different way of standing, of speaking. We had many examples of this. Even recently, Rebecca in Berlin, she said that, oh, my character was a very strong warrior and she was walking like that. And then when I went to off, we have in-game and off-game. When she said that when I went off, I still felt that I'm walking like my character and I felt it good. I knew that I'm self-confident, but I forgot that my body also should show it and feel it. And that was bleed out. Very nice example of bleeding out. And the catharsis. Catharsis is the best of LARP. This is the emotions which are coming by surprise, unexpectedly, when something really touches you as your character, or you are doing a ritual which looks really real. Or when your partner in LARP died and you are crying. That's the example of the other LARP, where one of the queens, she lost her lover, the other queen, and she started crying and crying, and then when we went off, she said that, yes, but I didn't know why, but I felt such a, like, devastated. I really felt that I lost her. She had also this bleed out in this way, but then she said, but it was so relieving, it was amazing. Finally, I had these like true feelings, because in real life, she said that I'm more closed and I'm not showing my emotions, and then in LARP, I just let it go, let it flow, and it went, and it was relieving, releasing. So this kind of, this place of joy, love, anger, grief, in-game crying is often associated with a bleed. These catharsis things are associated with bleed. And here, it's really cool to remember, we have a primary identity and the character. Bleed in is when you yourself have impact on your character, alter ego, and then bleed out is when your character feelings and emotions are having impact on you. And then you see this social contract magic circle between our two identities. There is bleed and alibi. Alibi is very interesting because if you do something mean to a person in LARP, then you can say, you have this alibi and say, oh, it wasn't me, it was my character. This is also sometimes overused. But then, yes, this is LARP, and then somebody can say like, why you are still angry with me? It was different reality. It wasn't me, it was my character. It was, so this alibi thing. 5 I in LARP. First, if you want to start, you should interpret the word you are going to step in. What are the rules? What are the mechanics? Then you should imagine it with details. So even if you are inside a place which is already the LARPing area, you can try to imagine it like more to get better immersion. And then start improvising, playing and interacting with others, then there would be much better immersion. And then preparation. For educational LARPs, we need some days of workshops with body and voice, empowerment, storytelling, acting, creating our characters. This is just a few days ago from Berlin, and people were creating their characters where they lived in post-apocalyptic tribes. Then talking about the mechanics, talking about the world. Here are the photos from Edino and Gimle. Edino and Gimle are two different worlds which were created, and they are real, but created in some way. So the preparations for fighting, sometimes preparations go whole year, like building a well for the LARPing area, or planting trees, which will be a very important tree in the elvish land, the sacred one, and so on. Or crafting. Crafting means that you are making your clothes accordingly to the theme of the LARP. Here it's post-apocalyptic, makeup, proper makeup. And then LARPs, Gimle and Edino, that are two words which were created. That's a full immersion. This is like the start. When you step in, that was just the minute before. During the LARP, you are not allowed to make pictures, so there is not many pictures. They are usually before or after. So this is just the time before we stepped into the role. And here is Gimle. Also, when you go out of this door, then you are in-game or out of the game. And also people are creating their own characters. Here is Diaz. Diaz is gender fluid, and he wanted to be a warrior, a female. She was a slave, Sin, and then she became a high queen after 3 days. And he said it was the best empowerment he could ever get. And fighting, of course. Different ways of helping immersions are rituals, or trying to build the collective identity by drawing banners, for example, that then you fight for them, you say, this is ours, and if somebody will steal it, you feel really like, that was ours, we have to fight for it, or I will die for my people. Or intrigues, nights. Oh, experiencing death is also interesting educational thing. Being a druid, money. This is also good for entrepreneurship. People were inventing their own professions, like how to earn LARPish money. And fight. Fight was in both LARPs really empowering, especially for those who are not used to, girls. And also about the perception, like how the character, here is Nanna. And I had no idea like how people are perceiving Nanna as the White Witch. And then one of the girls sent me this sketch and said, that's Nanna for me. And they said, oh, pretty close to what Nanna is. Fighting. And also having some social play. This is very important when you are just sitting there and talking. Or being in absolutely different world. And the most important thing, after the LARP, when all the bleeding, all the emotions, all the catharsis went through already, then it's over. Then you have to step out and do the rolling, like pff, just take it out and debrief. Talk about it. Talk about your emotions. Talk about what happened. This is just few minutes after the LARP finished. People are like, ah, yeah, it's finished. They are relieved because it was very tiring, but also excited. And this is also just after where the post-apocalyptic LARP finished. And this is Gimle. And then in educational LARPs, of course, to have these educational aspects, we are doing evaluations. So people are writing what they learned, how much they were involved, and we are checking it and improving and so on. And the last thing with the last couple of minutes is that I wanted to invite you just to give you some food for thoughts about like why people do LARPing. And it's not only about LARPing, but also other ways of escaping the reality or going into the fairyland or being Tolkien sitting by the fire and thinking, yeah, I'm in an elvish land. Why? And then, in some way, it is already, I believe it is like programmed in us from the very beginning that we are creating different realities. And this is something what I think Tolkien really captured, that it's substantial for us. So LARP word is kind for me of this simulacrum and simulation system, where probably most of you know about this Jean Baudrillard book, treaty actually it was, where he said that simulacra are copies that depict things that either had no original or that no longer have an original. So the LARP characters or the LARP village, they have no original because there were no orcs, for example, or there were no post-apocalyptic villages. Or when they are in medieval way, they are no longer medieval villages, but they are real, and sometimes they feel more real than reality. And simulation is the imitation of the operation of a real-world process or system over time. And Disneyland for adults, is it the LARP village, LARP place, LARPing, is it? Baudrillard was describing stages of getting to this stage when we are stepping into hyper-reality. I just want to focus on the third and the fourth stage. The third stage masks the absence of a profound reality where the sign pretends to be a faithful copy, but it is a copy with no original. We can see it in LARP. Signs and images claim to represent something real, but no representation is taking place, and arbitrary images are merely suggested as things which they have no relation to. And the first stage, this is this LARP stage, is a pure simulacrum, in which the simulacrum has no relationship to any reality whatsoever. So this tribal post-apocalyptic Edinu, or this Game of Thrones, Lord and Vikings TV series based Gimle, they have no origins in reality, but they are more real than the reality itself for some people, because they say that the emotions during the LARP were stronger than emotions in a real LARP. So why LARPing? In a commercial way and in educational way, there are two different ways of this. But we can just think about it. There's thousands of people who are going to Old Town post-apocalyptic LARP, or many others who are paying a lot just to get to the castle of Jobak LARP studio to try to recreate Downton Abbey, or the Witchcraft College, and Avalon, the Dark Magic College, and so on. So this is just because people believe that the normal reality is boring and want to escape. Or maybe it is a longing for the supernatural, because in many LARPs you can meet supernatural beings like elves, orcs, or even witches, this kind of stuff. Longing for living in a real community. Lots of LARPs, they are created in the way that there are fractions and people are in groups, and they are based on these social bonds inside and the collective identity of a group. Not many LARPs, I don't know personally, are not based on fractions, because this is something what gives you integrity to the whole world. Then it would be just a bunch of individuals running, having different objectives. When you have fractions, you have this loyalty, this honor thing, these things. Longing for forgotten values. Maybe it is also that then when you step into this Tolkien world, you have honor, love, pure friendship, and so on, or helping each other. Is it the Disneyland for adults, this LARPing village, or just stepping into LARPish reality? Baudrillard was using the word Disneyland, especially for simulacrum and simulation, that Disneyland has no original basics, but when you step in, it is real and beautiful, beautiful land where you can do everything what you want. All this is just some pattern, like in these simulacrum and simulations, which we are creating, which we are craving for maybe these things which Zbyszek was talking about before, the primordial desires of this strengthening, widening time and space and so on. Or maybe this is also the longing for utopias and dystopias, which has a very long tradition, creating different worlds and just trying and checking the possibilities, how it can evolve this community, what it will happen after the apocalypse. Or maybe some people just crave to meet the alter ego, to try to be somebody else, or try to be a superhero. That will be all. What it is, I don't know, but I definitely recommend to try and to find out yourself. Thank you very much. Any questions? If not, thank you.